after being accused of striking her boyfriend, a Boston police officer, John O'Keefe, with her SUV at a house party back in 2022, and then leaving him to die alone in the snow outside of the house of a fellow police officer. But her defense team says that she is the victim of vast police conspiracy and that O'Keefe was fatally beaten by another officer. It looks like we have a new witness taking the testimony here, swearing in and sitting on the stand. Let's go back to the trial here live on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus.
The jurors, spell your last name for the court reporter.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Shanon Burgess, last name Burgess.
Mr. Burgess, what do you do for a profession?
Sure. So I'm a digital forensics examiner. So I investigate digital devices to see what evidence they may record or hold.
Do you specialize in any type of forensic analysis?
Sure. So digital forensics is kind of a broad field, but I do specialize in vehicle forensics and cell phone forensics.
How long have you been a digital forensic analyst for?
Sure. So I've been a digital forensic analyst for approximately 10 years.
Before you were a digital forensic analyst, what type of work did you do?
Sure. So before I was a digital forensics analyst, I was working in the automotive manufacturing field, specifically related to automotive presses and industrial robotics.
I want to talk to you about some of your experience in digital forensic. Did you receive any certifications in digital forensics?
I did. I've received several certifications, one being what's called GIAC, Advanced Smartphone Forensics, another from Celebrite, a company named Celebrite, in Certified Mobile Examiner, and then certifications from Magnet Forensics as well.
Is Magnet a company that also includes Axiom?
Yes, Magnet is a company that produces the software known as Axiom.
In addition to your certifications, how many hours of specialized training approximately have you had in digital forensics?
Sure. So approximately, over the last 10 years, I've had around 700 hours of training, including courses and conference attendance in digital forensics.
In addition to your training and your study, do you have experience over the 10 years? Have you involved yourself in many cases regarding forensics found from a motor vehicle?
Yes, I have.
Can you give a general estimate of how many cases you've worked on?
Not off the top of my head, I couldn't, but it's been numerous.
You said that you specialize in mobile phones and digital forensics in motor vehicles.
That is correct.
Do you teach seminars on those issues?
I do. I teach seminars and presentations specifically in those disciplines.
Who are some of the audiences that you teach to?
Sure. So it ranges from attorneys to engineers that specialize in accident reconstruction to police agencies such as Interpol, which is a global police organization.
Have you testified as an expert in digital forensics in court before?
Yes, I have.
Have you ever testified as an expert regarding digital forensics in state courts?
Yes, I have.
And could you share with us those state courts?
Sure. So those state courts would be Oregon, Texas, Arkansas, New Mexico, and those would be the ones in the last 4 years that I can recall off the top of my head.
Have you testified as an expert in digital forensics in federal courts before?
No, just in state courts.
Have you testified in state courts in civil cases?
Yes, I have.
Have you testified for plaintiffs in civil cases?
I have testified for plaintiffs and defense in civil cases.
And have you testified in criminal cases before?
I have testified in criminal cases as well.
Have you testified for the prosecution before?
I have. I have testified for the prosecution as well as the defense.
Does the data change regardless of who you testify for?
No, it does not.
Where are you presently employed, Mr. Burgess?
Sure. So I'm presently employed with a company known as Aperture, and I'm located in their Dallas office.
Is Aperture a company that has offices outside of Texas?
Sure. So Aperture is a company across the country. So they've got a number of locations and offices, and they offer a number of service lines specifically related to forensics.
Do you ever work on different cases or scenarios with people in the Texas office?
Yes, I do. Sure. Go ahead.
Do you ever work with other employees of Aperture outside of the Texas office?
Yes. So I do occasionally corroborate with other experts in the Texas offices as well as the other offices across the country.
In this case, was there another professional who worked with Aperture that was related to this case that you talked to?
There was.
And who was that?
That would be Dr. Judson Welcher.
Is Dr. Welcher's profession and job the same as yours?
No, it is not.
What's the difference between what you do and what Dr. Judd Welcher does?
Sure. So what I do is investigate digital devices that can range from cell phones to vehicle modules to computer systems. What Dr. Welcher does is specifically related to accident reconstruction and biomechanics.
So you are not an accident reconstruction engineer?
I am not.
You are focused on the data?
I am focused on the data.
Did you ever publish any writings or papers regarding the area of your expertise?
Sure. So I have published 2 papers, specifically one related to damaged devices, and that is referencing event data recorders, which is your black box or your airbag control module, and specifically related to developing proof of concepts, because a lot of times these modules will store data in different places on the module. Proof of concepts are ways to verify and validate where that data is stored, so you're not missing data.
So that first article that you wrote about damaged modules, was that peer-reviewed?
It was.
And was it accepted?
It was accepted.
Could you tell us briefly what peer-reviewed means?
Sure. So peer review is a process of your peers or colleagues reviewing your work and determining that it's valid.
Is peer-reviewed articles often relied upon by other experts in the field?
Yes, they are.
You said that the first article you mentioned had to do with damaged modules. Is that one of the areas specifically that you're going to talk to us about in this case?
Sure. So it is specifically one of the areas I'm going to talk about in this case. And to kind of go back a little bit, the idea of proof of concept applies not only to damaged modules, but also, other vehicle modules, such as infotainment and telematics modules.
I don't think we're at infotainment and telematics yet, so if we can just understand a little better, very basically, what is proof of concept in action? What does that mean?
Sure. So proof of concept is taking a vehicle module, for example. This is typically an unidentified vehicle module that other individuals have not looked at or verified what is recorded and where it is stored. So a proof of concept is taking exemplar modules and doing tests on those modules. So creating events that are recorded within the modules. A lot of times when those modules are damaged in vehicle crashes or if they're just unsupported by your forensic tools, you will have to go to what's called chip off or chip swap forensics. That is specifically taking the chips off of the circuit board. So think of the hard drives from your computer, moving those hard drives to another module, a working module, to recover the data and validating that you've recovered all the data that you would expect to see.
Are there times in cases or studies where you need to recover data because it's not available to you through the traditional methods?
Yes, many times.
Let me ask you, you said there was a second article. What was that second peer review article about?
Sure. So that second peer-reviewed article was specifically related to mobile forensics, specifically iPhones, and how they track your device interactions as well as speed and location data and validating how accurate that data was.
In addition to talking to us about damaged modules, as you're going to do in this case, are you also going to talk to us about the timing information from mobile phones?
Yes, I am.
When did you first become involved in the study of this case?
So I first became involved in this case around October of 2024.
When you became involved in October of 2024, were you in receipt of any information or reports or documents to look at?
Yes, so I did receive some raw data as well as some photographs from the vehicle in this case.
When you say raw data from the vehicle, what does that mean specifically?
Sure. So again, when you take these chips or hard drives off of these modules, you can read those chips individually and recover any type of data that is recorded on those chips. So when I reference raw data, that is looking at that data in hexadecimal format, which is as close to binary data, which is what computers use to store data in, as you would want to get when reviewing this type of data.
When you receive data, does that presume it's already been downloaded by somebody?
Yes, that is correct.
In addition to looking at the data, you receive photographs. Do you know where those photographs came from?
I do not know specifically who those photographs came from, but I do know those photographs came from an initial download attempt on those modules.
You said there was an initial download attempt. When you looked at the information you received, did you learn whether or not there was an attempt prior to your involvement in October 2024 to obtain data from the modules or the so-called black box in the Lexus vehicle?
Yes, so there was an attempt to download data from the modules in the vehicle.
Did you understand whether or not there was a chip-off process, whether anybody attempted to take the computer chips off the computer boards and learn or download the data?
Yes, there was an attempt to remove various chips off of the boards and read those chips individually.
Did you have an opportunity to read any reports submitted regarding that earlier process that occurred before you even got involved?
Not before I got involved. Well, sorry. Yes, I was able to read a report from a individual known as AG Speak about that process, that initial process.
Did you learn who conducted, the name of the person that actually conducted the original process before you were involved in this case?
Yes, I understand that person to be Miss Maggie Gaffney.
Do you know generally when Miss Gaffney engaged in trying to download information from the computer boards of the defendant's car?
Yeah, if I can recall correctly, that was around December of 2023.
And in your review of materials and study materials, did you receive additional materials?
Yes, I did receive additional crash reports, just detailing the events of the night.
When you say crash reports, what does that mean?
So that's going to be crash reports from the Massachusetts State Police.
Is a crash report just a written report, or is it data?
No, it's just a report, no data.
Did you receive any other reports from any other individuals or experts?
No, not at that time.
Did you later, over time, receive any more additional information during your studies?
Yes, I believe so. And let me reference my report just so I don't misspeak.
Let me ask for the court's permission before you do that.
Sure, sorry.
Yes.
So I did, again, I reviewed a vehicle forensics report by AG Speak. I reviewed documentation that was identified to me as evidence review, a prior testimony of Trooper Garino, and I reviewed some surveillance videos as well as a report by Mr. Whiffen.
When did you receive any study or reports from Mr. Garino? Do you remember?
I do not remember exactly.
Okay. Was it recently, some time ago?
It would have been some time ago, probably late 2024 after we got involved.
Last year?
Yes.
And how about Mr. Whiffen's reports?
Mr. Whiffen's report, I believe I received in January of this year.
In the video, do you know when you received any video?
It would have been this year. I don't remember the exact dates.
Was it last month, months ago?
No, probably around January or February as well. Well, I take that back. It would have been early January, maybe late December.
Okay. I want to ask you just generally so we have a general perspective on this. When you began your study, was there something specifically that you were looking for?
There was. So specifically what we're looking for when we do a chip off on these vehicle modules, we're expecting to see one of two things: user data in a raw hexadecimal format, or a file system where user data is stored.
Were there certain events that you were focused on relative to the data in the defendant's Lexus?
Sure. So there were specific events that we were looking for specifically. That would be including time-stamped ignition-on events or power-on events, as well as other data.
Did you have any information or understanding that there were techstream events that you were to focus on?
Yes, I did have an understanding that there were techstream events located in a airbag control module.
How many techstream events were you focused on?
2 techstream events.
Could you just generally characterize those 2 events?
Sure. So one event has been identified as a 3-point turn maneuver, and the other has been identified as a backing maneuver.
Now, the studies of those events, is that the role of the accident reconstructionist?
Yes, it is.
So then what was your role related to, your specific role related to those 2 characterized events, the 3-point turn event and the backing maneuver event?
Sure. So within that techstream data, those events are documented with what's called a time count. So that's going to be a running timer from the time the vehicle powers on or the ignition comes on. So that counter will count seconds incrementally. And specifically, the focus was looking for any time-stamped data that would offer when that power-on event occurred.
Did you put together a PowerPoint presentation regarding your assessment of some of this case?
Yes, I did.
May I approach?
Yes.
Handing you a package, you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
And what is that?
That is my PowerPoint presentation that I prepared.
Just turn a few pages so
Sure.
you can look and see if that accurately reflects the presentation you put together.
Yes, it appears so.
And does this reflect some of your study of this case?
It does reflect some of the study in this case.
Is it an entire comprehensive study of everything that you learned, or is it an overview?
No, it is an overview.
For the course permission, I would mark this for identification. I intend to use this with the course permission as a chalk.
Okay, so we'll mark it for identification.
Exhibit SS for identification.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes.
Sir, I want you to teach us a little bit about the computers in a motor vehicle. Is there one computer, like a black box in an airplane?
No, so there's actually many. Depending on the vehicle, there could be hundreds with very specific functions to what they're what they're meant to do.
Tell us a little bit about why there's a need, or why many computers are used in a single vehicle.
Sure. So there's so many functions within your modern vehicle nowadays. So for instance, your infotainment module, that is a computer that operates your radio, your head unit. So that's going to be your obviously your radio, any type of built-in navigations, Android Auto, Apple CarPlay. There's what's called a telematics module. That's going to be what actually allows the vehicle to communicate with the internet services. So when you look at, if you've got an app that can track your vehicle or unlock your doors, that's being allowed through that telematics module.
With the court's permission, I'd like to have Ms. Gilman show page 3 of the PowerPoint.
Any objection, Mr. Leslie?
No objection, Your Honor. Thank you.
Sir, on your PowerPoint page 3, you have a chalk or diagram of a car. You may have a pointer in front of you if it helps.
Sure.
If you could direct your attention to the TV to your right. Could you explain to us what this diagram shows us?
Sure. So this is a diagram that just shows, a a small number of modules that you can find in specifically the Lexus in this case. Again, what we're focused on and looking at is the infotainment module and the telematics module in orange. For example, there are other modules known as the body control module and the airbag control module, the engine control module, which runs your vehicle. In addition to that, there are other modules that operate your door locks and unlocks, your windows, and various other functions.
When you use the word module, is that the same thing as a separate computer, or is it different somehow?
Yeah, so that using parlance, module would be referring to a separate computer within the vehicle.
Do all of these separate computers in the vehicle connect with each other?
They do. So all of these modules are connected to one another, and they do communicate with each other.
The information that would be commonly referred to as black box, or information that captures some of an event, where would that be in this diagram?
Sure. So the black box would be in the airbag control module.
And then as far as the radio system, you shared with us that's the infotainment module?
Yes. So the radio system is going to be, that data is going to be stored within the infotainment module.
In the telematics module, specifically what are we looking for there?
Sure. So the telematics module, again, is a module that allows communication with internet services. So if you've got an app on your phone that you can unlock or lock your doors, that's the telematics module is allowing that function to occur.
Do all make and model cars have the same setup as this diagram?
No, they do not. It will vary.
Does it vary from car maker to car maker?
It does. It varies from car maker to car maker. It varies from trim level as well.
Could two different cars from the same manufacturer, same style, could they have different components in those cars?
They could, yes.
Why is that?
Sure. So during the manufacturing phase, depending on cost and other things, manufacturers will source these modules from different third-party manufacturers. So one vehicle may have a module from, for instance, LG Electronics. One may have a module from Denso. And depending on how those individual manufacturers implement that software and hardware, they may record and store different types of data.
So from your experience, you've reviewed or you studied a 2022 Lexus, and then you see another Lexus, whether it's 2022, 2023, would you be able to say you've seen it, you've already done it, or do you have to individually look at each car?
Sure. So you would typically look at, and to correct, it's a 2021 Lexus. But if you want to understand what may be stored in a subject module, you would look at, take an exemplar vehicle and conduct some testing to determine what is being recorded and how that data is being recorded.
You mentioned that you were looking for time information or power on information regarding two events.
Correct.
Can we characterize those events as techstream events?
Yes, we can.
Do people sometimes refer to them as triggering events?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Are they often or sometimes referred to as something else other than a techstream event?
They can be referred to as other things besides techstream events.
Can you give us an example of what else they may be referred to as?
Sure. So that would be triggering events.
Why is it called a triggering event?
Sure. So the event is actually created when there's a trigger, and those trigger thresholds will vary and could be for a number of different reasons.
When a techstream event happens, or a so-called triggering event, what happens in the data?
Sure. So when a techstream event happens, there is when that trigger is met, there is certain data parameters or data types that are recorded for a specific time frame.
In this case, how many of those events were you looking at?
Just one.
When you mentioned time, I want to have you explain to us a little bit about time. You said there's a running clock. Can you explain that in a little more detail and simply what that means?
Sure. So in what's recorded within the techstream events, I'll refer to as a running clock. Essentially what it is when the vehicle is powered on, this clock starts to run and it counts seconds from power on. So when you press the ignition on, this clock starts, and when there is a techstream event that occurs within that cycle or within that ignition on, that is recorded as the time that that trigger occurred.
Does that give an actual time, like when you look at your watch or you look at your cell phone?
It does not give an actual time, yeah.
Excuse me, Your Honor, pardon the interruption. The chalk remains on the screen.
Okay, are you still reviewing the chalk?
We can take it down if it pleases Attorney Alisi.
Thank you.
So you were getting back to the clock. You said it's like a running clock. Is that like a stopwatch?
Yeah, that could be referred to as a stopwatch.
Where is that running clock kept in the data?
Sure, so that running clock is kept within the airbag control module.
Is that the so-called black box part of the data?
That is correct.
With the running clock, how do you determine the actual time as it relates to, say, for example, your digital watch or your iPhone or another clock?
Sure, so in that instance, you would need to have an event that occurs, such as a power-on event, with a timestamp to reference back that running clock.
When you got involved in this case and you looked at the information that was previously downloaded by Ms. Gaffney, was there any data regarding power on, power off to mark that time?
From the initial download, there was not.
When you involved yourself in your study, what was your primary focus as far as information you wanted to get and why?
Sure, so primary focus when I initially got brought on was to look at the modules and see if there's any data that was not recovered. And then specifically, again, looking at any time-stamped data that may have been recorded within the modules.
You talked about the differences in modules. In your PowerPoint, did you provide a couple of photographs of the modules so we can see what you were talking about?
Yes, I did.
With the court's permission, I'd like to put on page 4 of the PowerPoint.
Okay.
No objection, Your Honor.
Yep.
Could you explain to us the photograph on the left and then the photograph on the right?
Sure. So the photograph on the left is kind of a top-down view of the infotainment module from the Lexus. Photograph on the right is a top-down view of the telematics module from the Lexus.
Are these modules from this specific car, or is this a general photograph of a car and how it works?
These modules are from this specific vehicle.
From the car you studied?
Correct.
On the left infotainment module, you have different manufacturers. Why is that?
Sure. So again, these modules are not manufactured by Lexus or Toyota themselves. They are manufactured by third parties that are providing these modules to the car manufacturer. And these are just some examples of what we have seen within these specific vehicles and what type of manufacturers provide modules for these vehicles.
If we could turn to page 5, please. When you looked at the data that was provided in this case, did you draft a report?
Yes, I did.
Your initial impressions, can you share with us what your initial impressions were?
Sure. So initial impressions were that data was missed from the initial download.
What type of data do you think was missed, or did you conclude was missed from the initial download?
Sure. So that would be, essentially all of the user data was missed during that initial download.
How did you conclude or come to the opinion that data was missed on the initial download?
Sure. So reviewing the raw data, you can see that what we would expect to find, which would be things like contacts or from devices or device connections or time-stamped data, was not there in those initial downloads.
When you first looked at the data and you came to the conclusion that there was missing data, did you have a working theory on what you thought or how you thought the information was missing?
Sure. So I did have a working theory initially of why the data was missing.
And what was your initial theory?
Sure. So if, I'll reference kind of to the slide a little bit.
We can take that down if you'd like, Mr. Alisi.
Sure. So, sorry, can you repeat the question?
When you had your initial theory of data missing, what was it based on?
Sure. So the initial theory was based on two things. Either one of two things initially I thought could have happened, and that was a bad or partial read of the chips, Or it could be that the data-bearing chip that we are looking for was overlooked and not downloaded.
When your first thoughts were that this was a partial read of chips, was there anything about the chips when you looked at them that you concluded or came to an opinion on?
Sure. So initially, when I was reviewing the data and reviewing the part numbers on the chips, we can see what, how much storage is on each chip. And that can kind of get complicated, but essentially what we're looking at is we're looking at data stored as either bits or bytes. That is represented as a capital B or a small lowercase b. So initially, upon reviewing the data and with the assumption that a competent examiner would not miss a chip or a device or data-bearing chip on the board, I misinterpreted and wrote a lowercase or a capital B when I should have wrote a lowercase b in my notes, which led me to believe that there was a partial download of those initial chips.
Now, as a forensic analyst, do you rest on your initial impressions or do you go through a continued process?
No, so I do not. So just like the scientific method, if you have a working theory, you then review and research to either prove or disprove that theory.
And did you engage in that scientific process in working theory?
I did.
And how soon after you wrote the report did you realize there may be another source of the material?
Sure. So, I'll clarify a little bit. That initial was not a report; it was just a protocol that was proposed. But I believe that there was a supplemental protocol written within a week or two of the initial protocol.
And when you used the scientific method and studied the theory that you had, what did you decide or what did you learn?
Sure. So upon further review and research, I discovered that there was a SD card or a micro SD card that was on the circuit boards of one of the modules that was never looked at.
Now, you weren't present at the original process?
That is correct.
When you looked at the modules, those computer boards, did you notice anything about them that happened during the original process?
Sure. So I did notice during the chip off process, what you do to take these chips off is you apply heat to them. So that essentially liquefies the solder, which is a low temperature metal that connects the chips to the board and makes those connections so the board can communicate. And there was some damage caused from that initial chip off.
And again, why would you take the chips off a board if they're already attached? Why would you need to do that?
Sure. So when you don't have, typically if you think about downloading data from your cell phone, you have a USB port on your cell phone that you can easily plug that into a computer. That's not the case with vehicle modules. So you have to remove these chips from the board, and then you've got programmers or readers that will read the data from these chips.
Did you have a chance to study the boards that were already accessed during an earlier chip-off process before you got involved?
Yes, I did have an opportunity to study some photographs of the boards.
Could we have page 14, please, Ms. Gilman?
Any objection, Mr. Lewis?
No objection, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay, if we could turn to page 15. Tell us what this is, please.
Sure. So this is the infotainment module that you saw earlier. This is just two photographs during the disassembly process of taking that module apart.
Could you zoom in on the right photograph, Ms. Gilman? Okay, if that's the best we can do, that's fine right there. Could you share with us a little bit about what this is?
Sure. So this is how I received the modules when we took a secondary look at them. Essentially, this is if you see from the right photographs, there's many boards that are contained within this infotainment module. This specific board that we're looking at here on the right is the board where they removed chips from. What we're looking at is the circuit board itself, as well as two components that were previously removed during that initial download attempt.
So if you can't read the chips on the board, if you remove them, is there a tool that you can use to actually read the individual chips in isolation?
Yes, so there is tools, various tools that you can use to read those chips and read the data from those chips.
If we could have 16, please. Can you tell us what you see here?
Sure. So what you see here is two of the components that were initially removed from the board during that first download attempt. I've documented an additional chip that was still on the board that was not identified during that initial download on this side of the circuit board. And then I've got photographs matching the chip and where its placement was initially on the circuit board.
Could we have page 17, please? And what do we see there?
Sure. So this is some of the damage that occurred to the circuit board itself during the initial chip-off download attempt.
Do you have a pointer on the stand?
I do, yes.
Could you show us with the left photograph, point out what you mean by damage?
Sure. So right here on the left part, you've got these two highlighted blocks. So what this is if you remember back to the last slide, the larger chip that we were looking at,